There's a voice in your head that sounds exactly like you. It uses your vocabulary, it references your history, it speaks in first person, and it has been narrating your life since you were a child. Most people assume this voice is just their thinking. It's their unconscious awareness, just a natural internal dialogue every person has. Well, I want to offer you a different mindset, a different point of view. That voice is not always you. Sometimes, maybe more than you realize, it's what I call malware. Not a metaphor, a technical description. That malware is code installed in your operating system during your childhood that now runs autonomously, defending itself against the one thing that threatens it most, your growth. It does not want you destroyed, it wants you functional. It just absolutely does not want you upgraded, because an upgraded operating system means that malware gets detected and then removed. So it works constantly to keep you exactly where you are. And it does it in a voice that sounds just like yours. Every operating system has a malware. 3 operating systems, 3 different voices. If you're running authoritarian operating system, the one where worth is determined by your performance, your malware sounds like this. You're being selfish. They need you. If you say no, they will be hurt, and it will be your fault. You're not doing enough. You owe them. You cannot set that boundary, but what will they say? What will they think of you? Notice the themes: obligation, guilt, external judgment, self-erasure. That voice keeps you people-pleasing and convince you that your worth depends on accommodating others. It keeps you boundaryless by equating boundaries with cruelty. It keeps you overworking by insisting rest equals laziness. If you're running permissive operating system, the one where identity depends on recognition, your malware sounds like this. You should not have to work so hard. This is beneath you. They don't appreciate you. You deserve better than this. If they can't see your value, then that's their problem. That voice protects you from developing by framing every challenge as evidence you're in the wrong place, rather than evidence that you need to grow. It keeps you from sustained effort by suggesting that effort means you are not as exceptional as you think. If you're running the inconsistent operating system, the one where safety requires total control, your malware sounds like this. You can't trust this. Something is off, but you cannot name what. Don't get too comfortable. They're just going to change their mind. Stay alert. Do not commit fully. You need an exit strategy. That voice keeps you exhausted by demanding constant vigilance. Keeps you from trusting by insisting everyone is as unpredictable as your childhood environment was. It keeps you alone by preventing that genuine connection that requires the vulnerability that it will never allow. 3 operating systems, 3 voices, all of them designed to keep you exactly where you are. The malware is not just a voice. It has defense mechanisms, sophisticated ones. And you need to know all 3 because they are why so many people start this work and stop before it takes hold. The first is rationalization. When you begin to recognize a pattern, the malware provides a logical explanation that makes the pattern look like wisdom rather than limitation. It uses your own values against you, your commitment, your responsibility, your loyalty. The malware takes those real values and weaponizes them to keep you trapped. The second is escalation. When you actually start to change, when you set a real boundary, accept feedback, trust someone, the malware panics. And when it panics, it gets louder. The guilt intensifies. The hypervigilance spikes. The entitlement becomes more defensive. And most people interpret that escalation as evidence they're doing something wrong. It's actually the opposite. It's actually evidence that they're doing something right. The malware screams loudest right before it loses its power. The third is identity fusion. This is the most dangerous one. The malware speaks in first person. It says, I think, I feel, I believe. It colonizes your sense of self so completely that challenging it feels like attacking yourself. This is why so many people cannot see their own malware from inside their own minds. You need an external perspective, a coach, a mentor, a friend, someone who can say, this is not you thinking. That is your operating system defending itself. I want to tell you something that nobody tells you about doing this work. When you actually begin upgrading your operating system, the malware does not quietly step aside. It escalates. The guilt gets more intense. The hypervigilance spikes. The inner critic gets louder, more absolute, more relentless. And most people quit right before they get there. They interpret the escalation as evidence that change is too hard, too uncomfortable, not worth the cost. They go back to familiar patterns. The malware wins. But here's what actually is happening. When your malware escalates, it is scared. It is threatened. It recognizes that consciousness, your ability to see it clearly, is the beginning of its end. So it gets louder, hoping to convince you to go back to sleep, the way things were. The intensity of the malware voice is not evidence you're failing. It is evidence that you're winning. If your internal critic is getting louder than usual this week, it is because you're closer to the upgrade than you've ever been. Don't quit now. So how do you tell the difference between malware and your authentic voice? Because they sound similar. They both use the word I. They both claim to know what is best for you. Here's how you distinguish them. The malware uses absolute language. Always, never, should, must. It speaks in certainty about things that are not certain. It focuses on fear, obligation, or guilt, or entitlement, and it sounds harsh, critical, demanding, or anxious. And it limits, always, even when it sounds like wisdom, even when it sounds like realism. Your authentic voice uses nuanced language, sometimes might, could, choose. It acknowledges difficulty without the difficulty as a reason to stop. It sounds compassionate, curious, or honest. It's grounded, and it explains, it finds possibilities inside whatever constraint you're facing. And here's a practical test I give every client. This is it, one question. Malware always limits. Your authentic voice expands, always, even when it is asking hard things of you. The malware says, I cannot set the boundary because people need me. Your authentic voice says, I want to help them, but I need to honor my capacity. The malware says, this is too hard. I must be in the wrong place. Your authentic voice says, this is difficult, but I need to develop new skills to succeed at this. The malware says, don't trust this. Something is going to shift. Your authentic voice says, this person has been consistent, and I can trust them while remaining appropriately discerning. Notice the difference. The malware speaks in absolutes, either or. Your authentic voice speaks in both and, which means you still have a choice. There is one question that exposes the malware every single time. When you hear a thought about yourself, a judgment, a limitation, a reason why you cannot do something or something that you don't deserve, ask this question. Is this thought expanding my possibilities or limiting them? That's the test. One question, no exceptions. The malware limits, always. Even when it sounds like wisdom. Even when it sounds like honest self-assessment. Even when it sounds like the most reasonable thing you have heard all day. I'm being realistic about my limitations. That's the malware. Your authentic voice says, I have limitations, but I can still grow. They do not appreciate me. That's malware. Your authentic voice says, well, I'm not receiving the recognition I was hoping for, but I can either communicate my needs or evaluate whether this is the right environment for me. I cannot trust this. That's malware. Your authentic voice says, this person has been consistent so far and I can trust them while staying appropriately discerning. One voice limits, the other voice expands. You've been listening to the wrong one your entire life. Here's what I want to leave you with. The malware is not you. It is code, foreign code installed in your childhood, running absolutely, running autonomously, defending itself against the one thing that would end it, your conscious awareness. It has been speaking your entire life. Most of the time you thought it was your thinking. It wasn't. It was an operating system protecting itself. Here's what is also true. Once you hear the malware clearly, once you know its voice, its patterns, its scripts, and what it's trying to protect you from, you cannot unhear it. And once you hear it, you have a choice. You have a choice that you didn't have before. Not whether it speaks, it will speak, but whether you follow it. This is the work. Not silencing the malware permanently, learning to hear the difference between its voice and the voice of growth, the voice that so clearly wants you to grow. That skill alone will change how you lead, how you decide, and how you live. If you want to go deeper on this to identify your specific operating system, check out the link below. There's more there. Like, follow, and subscribe. Thank you for tuning in.